It's the middle of the night and it happens again. That sharp, sudden bark from the other room, then another, then that pause where you're praying it was the last one, and then it isn't. And you do what you always do, because it's 2 in the morning and the neighbors have a wall. You call out, "Hey! Quiet!" And for a moment, blissfully, it works. He stops. You settle back into the pillow, and 20 minutes later he starts again. Here's what I need you to understand before we go one word further, because it's the thing that changes everything. When you called out and he went quiet, you didn't win that round. He did. You just taught him, in the clearest possible language, that barking at night makes the human appear. And he filed that away, because dogs are brilliant learners and we are accidental teachers. But that's only half the story, and the other half is the reason some nighttime barking will never stop, no matter how perfectly you ignore it. Hi everyone, I'm Leo Bennett, your neighborhood dog guy, and today we're getting your nights back. 5 things to do about the barking, in order, and I'm saving the best for last, because number 5 is a single change to your dog's evening that quietly drains the fuel the barking runs on, and most owners never even think of it. But before any of it, there's something you have to rule out first, and if you skip it, nothing else on this list will work. Hit subscribe and let's start there. Before you change one thing about your response, ask yourself a single question. Is this new? Because the difference between a dog who's always been a bit of a barker and a dog who suddenly started 3 weeks ago is the difference between a training problem and a medical one, and you cannot train your way out of a medical one. If your dog is older and the barking arrived recently, take this seriously. Here's what can sit underneath it. Pain is the big one, and it's sneaky, because aching joints and arthritis get worse at night when the house goes quiet, the distractions disappear, and lying in one position starts to hurt. A urinary tract infection sends a dog to the door again and again because the bladder genuinely won't wait. Senior kidneys make more urine, and senior bladders hold less, so sometimes a 2 a.m. bark is exactly what it looks like, a dog who truly needs to go out. And then there's canine cognitive dysfunction, essentially dog dementia. One study found it affected around 1/3 of dogs over the age of 11. Vets use the word sundowning, borrowed from human medicine, because the confusion and anxiety climb after dark. The bark that comes with it is often directionless, at a wall, at a corner, at nothing, paired with pacing, getting stuck behind furniture, staring into space, and a flipped sleep schedule where they're up all night and flat all day. So here is the correct way, and it comes before everything else. If the barking is new, if your dog is a senior, or if you're seeing pacing, accidents in a house-trained dog, confusion, stiffness, or crying when they move, book a vet visit before you try any training. Because here's the hopeful part. Pain is treatable, infections are curable, and while dementia has no cure, its progression can often be slowed with your vet's help, medication, diet, and supplements. The caution I'll give you is the most important sentence in this whole section. Do not try to train through a medical problem. A dog barking at night because he's in pain, or frightened and disoriented, is asking you for help, not attention, and ignoring that is the one version of this advice that can genuinely hurt him. So rule it out first. And once your dog has a clean bill of health, we can look at what's actually driving the noise. And it almost always comes down to one of a handful of reasons, so let's name them, because you can't fix a bark until you know what it's for. Behaviorists sort nighttime barking into a few buckets. There's alarm barking, a reaction to a specific trigger, a sound, a sight, something your dog can see or hear that you can't. There's boredom, the restless, understimulated energy of a dog, especially a young or working breed, who slept all day and now has nothing to do. There's anxiety, including separation-related distress, where being alone at night is the whole problem. And there's the big one, attention-seeking, the learned bark that we talked about at the top. Here's the mechanism underneath that last one, and it's worth understanding because it's the one owners create by accident. Behaviorists call it reinforcement, and it's brutally simple. Any response you give to the barking makes it stronger. Any. Letting him out, obviously, but also going to him, also talking to him. And here's the one that catches everyone, also yelling at him to be quiet. To a dog alone in a dark room, a human who appears and makes noise back is a win, because attention is attention, and negative attention still counts. From his side of the wall, barking is a button that summons you, and he's just pressing the button. So the correct way starts with honesty about which bucket you're in. If it's a trigger, you manage the environment, close the curtains to kill the sightlines, Run a white noise machine or a fan to mask the sounds that set him off. Move his bed to a quieter part of the house. If it's boredom or attention, we retrain it, and I'll show you how in a second. And a real caution here, whatever you do, do not reach for a bark collar, the shock, spray, and ultrasonic kind. They punish the symptom without ever touching the cause, and with anxiety-based or fear-based barking, they reliably make a frightened dog more frightened, which makes everything worse. So now let's actually retrain the learned bark, and I'm not going to pretend this part is easy, because week 1 is where most people quietly give up. To unwind a behavior your dog has learned pays off, you stop letting it pay off. That means the next time he barks for attention, you give him absolutely nothing. No voice, no footsteps, no light, no eye contact, nothing. And here's the part you have to brace for, because it's the reason people fail. When something that has always worked suddenly stops working, dogs don't shrug and give up. They try harder. The barking gets louder, longer, more insistent, because in his mind he just needs to press the button more times. Trainers call this an extinction burst, and it means the first few nights get worse before they get better. Write this down, because it is the whole game. If you cave during that burst, even once, even just to shout, you haven't lost a night, you've taught him that the button still works, it just takes 40 barks now instead of 4, and you've made the habit stronger and started over from a worse place. So the correct way is to decide before you start that you're truly going to do this, then commit completely, every night, and get everyone in the house to agree, because one person opening the door at 3 a.m. undoes all of it. But ignoring the bad is only half of it, and this is where most advice stops and fails you. For every no, there has to be a yes. You have to catch him being quiet and reward that, because a dog needs to learn what to do, not just what not to do. So when there's a pause in the barking, even a couple of seconds of silence, that's the moment a calm word of praise or a quietly delivered treat teaches him the lesson you actually want. Silence is what makes good things happen. Many trainers build this into teaching a settle, a mat, or a bed, where lying down quietly earns the reward, giving him a job that's physically incompatible with barking, and make the nights survivable while you do the work. Earplugs, white noise, a comfortable crate, or a cozy den-like space if he finds that reassuring rather than distressing. And the caution, if closing him in triggers genuine panic rather than protest, frantic clawing, drooling, destruction, that points to separation anxiety, and that's a case for a qualified trainer or behaviorist, not a battle of wills. And now the two that make all of that retraining 10 times easier, and the last one is the one I promised you. Here's a truth that solves more nighttime barking than any training technique. A tired dog is a quiet dog. So much nighttime barking is simply a dog who slept through a boring day and arrived at bedtime with a full tank of unspent energy and nowhere to put it. Think about what you'd feel like if you'd napped since lunch and someone expected you to sleep at 10. So the correct way, front load the day so the tank is empty by night. A real walk, a proper play session, and crucially, some mental work, because chewing and sniffing and problem solving tire a dog out as deeply as running does. The caution, match it to your dog. A young athletic breed needs far more than a senior, and don't do hard exercise right before bed, which winds some dogs up rather than down. And now the one I've been building to, the single change that quietly drains the fuel the barking runs on. Rework the last hour before bed into a wind-down ritual, and make the very last thing a calming, absorbing job. Here's why it beats a late burst of exercise. You want his body pointed towards sleep, not revved up. So take him out for a final unhurried toilet trip so a full bladder can't be the 2 a.m. reason. Then, right before lights out, give him something to lick or gently chew, a stuffed food toy or a lick mat, because the licking and chewing itself releases calming, endorphin-driven relaxation and settles a dog into rest. You've emptied the bladder, quieted the mind, and handed him a peaceful full stomach slide into sleep, instead of a dark empty room with nothing to do but listen for things to bark at. Do this consistently, and you're not fighting the barking anymore, you've removed the reasons for it. The caution, choose size-appropriate chews, supervise new ones, and skip the extra calories by taking them out of his dinner. So let's gather it all up. Rule out the medical cause first, especially in a senior dog. Figure out which bark you've got, alarm, boredom, anxiety, or attention, and manage the triggers you can. Retrain the learned bark by giving nothing during the burst and rewarding the silence, with the whole house committed. Empty the tank with real physical and mental exercise during the day, and build a calming wind-down ritual with a last toilet trip and a lick mat right before bed. And if you've spent weeks shouting through the wall at 2 in the morning, please don't feel 1 ounce of guilt. You responded because you wanted the noise to stop and because some part of you was checking he was okay, which is the most decent instinct there is. The fact that you sat through a whole masterclass to fix this properly instead of strapping a shock collar on him tells me he picked exactly the right person. So tonight, take him out late, hand him that lick mat, and hold your nerve through the burst. And come tell me in the comments what your dog barks at and what time he starts, because I read as many as I can. Hit that like button so this reaches more exhausted dog owners, subscribe for the next deep dive, and take good care of them and take good care of yourself. I'll see you next time.